In the last few videos, we've been building the 52 pickup card program. It's just been a small demo program and a good chance to learn some of the basics of C# programming. For the next feature, I want a way to reset the deck to its original state. We have it at the point where we can deal the cards and move them around a little bit, but I need to be able to reset that deck without closing the program and reopening it. Another issue is if I just hit deal cards again, it reinserts the original cards, but it leaves these here. And just for an example of what this means, let's go back to the code while this is still running. And I'm going to the immediate window, which allows us to run various commands, test out different code samples, and get values from the program in real time. And I'm going to take a look at the controls collection for the form. First, I'm going to put a breakpoint in the code, and I think I'll put it right on the first line. We've already dealt the cards a few times, but I want to see what happens just before the next deal goes through. So let's press deal cards one more time, and it pauses on the first line, and I'm going to look at the controls collection of the form. So I'm going to type question mark, which means print, to the immediate window, this, controls, and count. And let's see what that gives us. So now we have 113 controls on the form. That's because I've dealt the cards a number of times, and what it's been doing is to place the cards over each other. So it has a number of sets of cards in that one place. Now eventually this would eat up a lot of memory, and it's just basically inefficient. So that entire deck needs to be reset, and of course these need to be removed as well. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways of doing that. The first one is going to be the wrong way, and that's kind of important because this is a common issue for programmers, especially newer programmers. How do you remove items from a collection? I have two subroutines here, reset deck wrong and reset deck, and I'm going to try out the wrong one first. I'm just going to come up here, take away this breakpoint, add in a reference to the subroutine. Don't forget the parentheses and the semicolon. And the application is still running, so let's go ahead and stop it for now. So before I run this, let me take a look at the code real quick. What this is going to do is to use the Foreach loop that you're already familiar with. It's going to look at every control within the form. Again, the word "this" refers to the form that we're working with, and it's going to look at every single control in there. It's going to create a reference to it, and then it's going to get the type. And if that type equals a picture box, it's going to remove that control from the form. So it's going to go through the collection from beginning to end, and it's going to evaluate every control and remove all the picture boxes. So let's try that out. Let's deal the cards, take a few out of the deck, and then let's try resetting. Well, that's a problem because it left a couple behind. I'm guessing it probably left some of these behind too. So let's deal the cards a couple more times. It took away one more. It's still leaving that one. Okay, that one's finally gone. But let's put in a breakpoint here. Let's deal the cards again, and let's try this command again. Well, now it still has 112 controls on the form. And the reason this doesn't work is because the Foreach loop that you see here is going through the collection from start to finish. So when it removes a control from the collection, all the controls after that are essentially moved to the left. And then it iterates to the next control. So it's skipping over controls in the collection, and it's leaving some of those picture boxes behind. To picture this real simply, let me show you this slide that I created. Let's assume that this is the collection right here. You have 8 items, and you start with the first one. You discover that it's a picture box, so you remove it. Then that moves everything over to the left, and then the program iterates and moves on to number 2. It skips number 1, discovers number 2 is a picture box, removes that one, and then moves on to number 4. So you see how that works. Essentially, it's skipping items within the collection because it's removing them while iterating at the same time. So we can't use a for each loop, but what we can use is another type of for loop, and it's sometimes called a for next loop because some languages actually use the word next at the end of it. But in C# and other C-derived languages, it takes this form. You have the word for, then you have parentheses, and you actually have 3 statements here. And they're separated by semicolons, as you can see here. You have the initialization statement, which in this case says int I equals this controls count minus 1. So what it's doing, it's counting the number of controls on the form and subtracting 1 since the collection starts at 0. So that will give us the number to start at. Then you have a conditional statement which determines when the loop will actually end. At some point this loop has to exit. So this conditional statement says I is greater than or equal to 0. So this loop will continue to operate so long as that condition is met. Once I gets lower than 0, the loop is going to stop and exit. And then you have the incrementing statement, which in this case subtracts 1 from the value of I. And the double minus sign actually does that. So what this subroutine is going to do, it's going to start at the end of the collection, and it's going to work its way backwards one control at a time. It's still going to test the type, and if it's a picture box, it's going to remove it from the collection. But since it's working backwards, you're not going to have that problem where it skips over elements within the collection. Let's see how this works. First, I'm going to put a breakpoint here because I want to see this in action. And then I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to change the call to reset deck. Then I'm going to stop the program because I left it running. And I'm going to restart it. Going to deal the cards. Let's remove this breakpoint that I left in here. Click continue. And it's going through the reset deck subroutine already. Let's step through it real quick and see what this does. Even though there aren't many controls on the form, I'm going to press F11 to step through to the next statement, and it works its way through each of those conditional statements one at a time. Let's take a look at the locals collection down here. I equals 0. So if I equals 0, that means it's only seeing one control on the form, and that would be the button that we clicked. So let's see what it does with that. So I'm going to click F11 again. And if we look down here in the locals collection, we'll see that TP, which is the type, actually equals button. It's a Windows Forms button. So it should skip over that. So it skipped over that because it's not a picture box. And so it's exiting from the loop and it's done. So let's click continue. So it comes up to the form, and let's take a few cards out of the deck. Go ahead and deal the cards again. So it comes back to the subroutine, and let's see what it finds this time. So I now equals 56 because it's found 56 controls, or actually 57 if you count 0. It's found 57 controls on the form. So let's keep stepping through the code, keep pressing F11, and it's testing the first one to see what the type is. So it's found the button. The button seems to be the last control in the collection, and it skips over that one, subtracts 1, goes to the next control, or the previous control actually, and it's found a picture box. So it removes that picture box, goes to the next one. That's a picture box too, and all the rest of them are going to be picture boxes, so it's going to keep removing them. But it left that button alone, and it's removing all the controls because it's going backwards now, and it's not skipping over them. So let's remove this breakpoint and click continue. And as you can see, it's reset the cards properly. And let's deal the cards a couple more times, and then I'm going to come back to the code, place that breakpoint that I had before, and let's see what it does to the controls count. Come down here, and you can press the up arrow key in order to repeat the last command. So now there's only 57 controls because it's removing all the picture boxes each time. So it's not overloading the form with duplicate controls like it was doing before. So now we have an application that can deal the cards and reset them properly. Let me go ahead and remove all the breakpoints, click continue. Let's try that once again, and you can see that it's working. So our application is almost finished for now. The next thing I'm going to do is close this down, go back to form design, and put one more button on there. And I'm going to call it button close, because I want some way to shut this down without actually hitting the X up in the corner. I'm going to change the text to exit, and I'm going to double click on it and type application exit. And that's a simple command that will close down the program. So let's run it through its paces. Deal the cards, and actually those buttons should probably be reversed. The exit should be over here on the right. Deal a few cards, reset, and then exit. In next video, we'll review some of the things we've learned through this project and go over some of the concepts you've learned and a few of the commands. So stay tuned.